Welcome to Bookies. I'm Bear, and you have reached the only YouTube channel that, when fully monetized, will give 100% of the proceeds to local libraries and literacy programs. So if that sounds like a great idea to you, I'll keep reading the books and reviewing them, and all you need to do is subscribe. Today we're going to talk about a heartbreaking work of staggering genius by Dave Eggers. That novel won the Pullitzer Prize for nonfiction in 2001, and yeah, I know the novel's been out for a very long time now, but when you've spent your entire adult life practicing law and reading for 12 hours a day, reading for pleasure when you come home is kind of the last thing you do. So the background of the novel is pretty simple. One, it's a memoir, which means that Eggers is describing the years in his life immediately following the death of his mother, in which he undertook the responsibility of raising his 8-year-old brother. I've seen reviews all over the board on this novel. Some people really loved it and other people simply did not. And I think it's because it's an emotional novel and you can either relate to the emotions that Eggers is putting onto the page or you can't. Personally, for me, I could relate to it quite easily. I had a situation when I was growing up where my older brother essentially was the father figure for me for a number of years while my dad was suffering through alcoholism. And he really didn't get a grip on that until I was in my high school years. So for a number of years, my preteen years, when I was a little boy, my brother was a father to me. So for me, this novel really reached me. In general, I'm not a big fan of memoirs because I tend to find them kind of boring and dull. But in this case, really the question is, does this memoir, which describes the years that Eggers and his little brother Toph spent in California immediately following the death of his parents, does it transcend just being a couple years in the life of two people? And I think it really does. And a lot of that has to do with the writing style of Eggers himself. The prose soars with heartbreak, loss, and joy at the same time. And that's life. I mean, that's the living experience. I'll give you an example. Eggers returns to his hometown, Chicago, where he's looking for the remains of his parents who both dedicated their bodies to science. And so the remains were lost in the shuffle of that. And he was with some old friends and he writes this: conversation dissolves and we stare at each other. They know I am not them. I'm something else. I'm deformed. Am 100 years old. I will spend the next day looking for the remains of my parents. So Eggers writes with this staggering emptiness for the loss of his mother to cancer. And he finds the ashes of his mother, and he has this internal dialogue, which is really lovely. Do the ashes mean anything? Or are they just a box of remains? Or do they mean everything? Is it sacrilegious to cast those remains out into Lake Michigan? His mother was a very devout Catholic, so he's struggling with what's the proper thing to do here? Is this something she would want, or is this internal dialogue and argument really just kind of a Catholic sense of self-punishment? And as he casts those ashes out into the lake, the inner dialogue once again takes precedence. He writes, I start throwing faster and faster, grabbing and throwing, flailing almost, dust everywhere. My coat is snowed with dust. She is aghast. I am pathetic. This is what I've done. This is what it's come to, winging her remains into the lake. No, she's not watching me. She's gone. She has an afterlife, but I will not, because I do not believe. For me, this novel really reached into the soul because of a common experience I shared with the author. And I'll give you one more example through a rather long quote, but it's worth it. Eggers describes sitting in their family church, and he's imagining the funeral of his mother as it should have been. And he writes, we would be there in the first pew, the beautiful and tragic, as 100 or more would stand before us and speak of her, all the gifts she granted them, and her life would be recounted in glorious detail, every moment. Then the ceiling would go. The barrel vaulting would rise and the entire roof would quietly unhinge itself and lift up. The church's wooden cross supports would fly up and away and would quickly get so small, tiny in the rich blue sky, and would become birds. The church would double in size, would triple, suddenly taking in all those waiting outside, and then become bigger, would take in everyone she had ever known, millions, all with their hearts in their two hands, offering them to her. The angels would come, thousands, slender, winged, and bird-boned, descending and circling, all with sharp, small eyes, and would be laughing, full of mirth. Why not? This was happy, happy. My mother would be there, her hair, her original hair, feathered up huge the way she liked it, before she lost it. Her eyes smiling to see us all there, knowing all those she had touched were there, and that they were giving back, giving at least this much back. And we and she would all be so happy not to see her as some embalmed thing, but instead as this wonderfully glowing, bright visage above us all. And then Eggers writes of the reality. Where were the people? It was not a crowd. It was a scattered thing, a few here, a few there. Everyone loved her. Where were they? This could not be, would not do. A life and then this 40 people. And so does the memoir transcend? Does it reach something in our souls that would make us want to read this? And for me, the answer is yes. And it's because of this. My mom surprised us with a rather sudden death. And from my teenage years, I always understood and believed that her neuromuscular disease would take her slowly. And so I had a lot of time to think about when she would pass away. And in my mind, I thought that during her funeral, I would have brave and noble words, and they would just flow out of me so I could communicate to everybody there just how precious she was and how by pouring her life out, she saved her boys. And the reality was I sat frozen. I said nothing. And those noble words never came. And I never spoke my own heartbreaking work of staggering genius on behalf of my mother. And hardly anyone came to the funeral, just like the author. And even when she touched the lives of hundreds, taking in the homeless and offering them comfort, hardly anybody came. And I left that funeral walking across the parking lot, holding the hand of my little boy that would never get to know my mother, and waving goodbye to an uncle that I'm probably never going to see again. And I just sat in that minivan, stunned by the hollow feeling of it all. And I still feel that. And so for me, that is the emotional tap that Eggers turned on for me when I read this. And that's death. Death is nothing new to the human condition. It's awful. And what is different in this memoir is that Eggers writes of it so beautifully, both how death is both heartbreaking, somewhat kind of shameful, and in a sense, humorous all at the same time, if you have the courage to view it that way. And so my recommendation, if you can tap into the emotions that the author is giving us, then this novel is really going to speak to you. Buy it, read it, take it home, and just let it speak to your soul. If you're not that kind of person, don't read the novel. But for me, this novel is a 4.25 out of 5, and that's trying to remove as much of the emotion from it as possible. You could tell by the quotes that I gave you that Eggers is a phenomenal writer. The whole novel is full of that description, but what was lacking in those particular quotes was the humor that Eggers has throughout. And so I do recommend that you read this novel. And with that, I'm going to thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the like button and do subscribe. Have a great day, and God bless.